Welcome and good morning to our fourth Tuesday legal marketing update for lawyers. For those of you who are joining us again, welcome back. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. We are happy to have you here. I'll give you a brief introduction to myself. My name is Victoria Blute, and I am the Lawlytics Community Manager. And my interests are really to keep attorneys on the cutting edge of web technology and web trends so that you can stay in control of your law firm's marketing. And I will be hosting and moderating today's discussion. Now, if you join us regularly for our webinars, we like to point out that this presentation is a little different from those in that it's more of a discussion. We select some different topics and have sort of a free-form discussion about them. So while the format's a little different, the discussions tend to be both informative and lively. So with that said, thanks for joining us, and let me introduce you to today's panelists. Today's panelists are Dan Jaffe and Lawlytics Senior Marketing Strategist Larry Bodine. I'll briefly introduce you to Dan for those of you who aren't familiar with him. Dan is an attorney and also the CEO of Lawlytics. He is passionate about teaching attorneys about how online legal marketing really works and empowering them to get more out of their legal marketing without falling into the traps and tricks that are commonly sold by a lot of vendors. He graduated from law school in 1998 and practiced for over a decade and tried over 100 cases before transitioning into legal technology full-time. So with that, Dan, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Good morning, Tori, and good morning, Larry. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more and then introduce Larry, and then we can go into the presentation in chief. So yeah, I practiced law for about 10 years between 1999 and 2009. And for those of you who don't know my story yet, I'll make this very brief. I stumbled into legal marketing technology trying to help a friend get more business for his law firm that didn't compete with mine. I'd always been very good at getting business online on the web, using basically my own time and learning how to do it myself. And I thought, well, maybe I could help him. That ended up evolving very rapidly into a national directory for DUI defense lawyers, became a very well-received and dominant website. And within about 6 months or so, it had equaled or replaced my law income. And I had to make the decision, do I do that full-time or do I practice law full-time? I had already successfully started law practices in both Seattle and in the Phoenix area, was practicing in Phoenix at the time, and decided, well, this technology thing is very interesting. I could always reopen my practice. So I tried my last few cases, wound down my practice, and focused full-time on the technology. One thing led to another, and I started getting acquisition offers from major internet companies. About 2 years into that project, that directory was acquired by a major internet company, giving me the time and the capital to be able to start Lawlytics, which is the dream legal marketing solution that I wished that I had had while I was practicing law. Larry Bodine is our senior legal marketing, I want to say guru, because strategist doesn't really encompass everything that he does and everything that he has done. I've been aware of Larry for basically as long as I've been practicing law as an authority on how to grow a law firm in an ethical way that's both cost effective and sustainable. His background is in practicing law, as is mine. He was a lawyer before he was a legal marketer, and also has a background in journalism. Larry has an amazing ability to boil down to its essence, the human to human communication that is so necessary in building a law practice, whether it's communicating with clients, whether it's communicating with referral sources, whether it's talking about your practice. And his knowledge really transcends the online arena to really every aspect of growing a practice. He's been the lead marketer in major law firms. He's also been the editor-in-chief of lawyers.com when it was owned by Martin Hubble, as well as many other positions with the ABA, with other authoritative bodies that really are there to help lawyers build their practices and get the most out of what they're doing. Larry is well known and frequently speaks in various CLE forums, and it's just a pleasure to have him as part of Lawlytics and have him with us today. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Larry to say a few words before we get into things.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a thrill to be the senior legal marketing strategist for Lawlytics. I've been advising law firms for 25 years on business development, written a blog since 2007, and just really enjoy working with lawyers and working with the Lawlytics team to help lawyers get more business and be more successful online. And why don't we go over some of the topics that we're going to cover today?
Yeah, let's have a look here. So here's what we've got for today's discussion. First, we're going to look at law firm content marketing and SEO with some surprising insights about how those two areas have a lot more to do with each other than you'd think. Then we'll take a brief peek into social media for lawyers by discussing whether attorneys should publish articles on LinkedIn. After that, Larry's going to tell us a little bit about legal business development tips for this year, for 2016, and about one in particular that can affect your law firm's business, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. Then we'll talk a little bit about a new Google product that can help you be more disciplined in your legal marketing activities. And that'll tie into a discussion about blogging and some other things as well. So let's have a look at our first topic. Our first topic is law firm content marketing and SEO, and we felt that this was an important topic to bring up this month because it seems like there is a lot of confusion around those two terms. I've read a number of articles stating that content marketing and SEO are two completely different things. They are two things that are totally incompatible with each other, or at the very best, they are two things that can sort of work together in a side-by-side fashion. But that's not really an accurate depiction of what each of these elements are, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to ask Larry, why is content marketing such a valuable part of law firm marketing strategy?
Well, you really can't have any marketing unless you have content. And one of the things that sort of brings this the importance of content to the fore is a brand new report that's out from the Legal Marketing Association and Bloomberg. And they found that 2/3 of law firms are increasing their business development and marketing efforts. And the interesting thing is that content generation is also the biggest area in which law firms are adding resources. Content marketing is becoming important even at small law firms. And interesting thing to find is that the report says 60% of law firms are now using a content generation service, which of course is one of the services of Lawlytics. And what this all sort of brings us to is, sort of in one hand you have content, and the other you have SEO, and they're really not all that separate because, if you're doing content marketing right, good SEO is the benefit that is going to come naturally from that.
And Dan, so we've got, oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so that really the more appropriate content discussion, I would say, would be to focus on what I call content optimization.
And with that said, Dan, so we've talked a little bit about how content marketing and SEO are not these two disparate things. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I really like the way that you framed it, Larry. What was the term that you just used? Oh, I think maybe Larry is muted. Yeah, as far as content and SEO being the same, when you look at what Google's business model is, and the other search engines for that matter, they want to supply their users with the most relevant answers to the questions that they ask of the search engines. And so it's basically they want to provide the most accurate human-to-human communication, and that's what good content is. And when you talk about, as Larry put it, content optimization, it really makes sense that if you're optimizing it for the search engines, you're optimizing it for what the search engine's business model is, and that is the continued use of the search engines by people who are asking it questions. And so when you provide those types of good answers that resonate with audiences, search engines will reward that. All marketing is basically communication, and that's really all that the search engines at their core are interested in promulgating. And by focusing more on content and less on SEO, which has really devolved the way that a lot of marketers sell it into really just a way of underhandedly saying, hire us to trick Google. Google's not really trickable anymore, at least not for a very long time. If you can find somebody that can do it for a month or two, that is ultimately going to not result in a good return on investment. As compared to if you were to spend that time or that money just creating good content that answers people's questions.
Dan, and I would underscore what you just said, that by illustrating the fact that Google is now run by artificial intelligence. They have a program called RankBrain, which is designed to analyze what people more often than not say into their cell phones when they're doing a voice search, and it makes sort of the whole keyword approach obsolete, because Google is designed to answer questions like, how does getting a second DUI, affect the outcome of my previous pending case? And what I think you're going to see is more like a Q&A. So you're going to ask Siri or OK Google. The question will be, I can't pay my mortgage. Should I call a bankruptcy lawyer? And the search engine is going to answer by saying, well, I found 2 bankruptcy attorneys within 2 miles. Would you like to read the reviews about them?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing to me. So we have conversations with lawyers that are interested in Lawlytics every day. And usually those lawyers are either with another legal marketing company or they're also considering other legal marketing companies. And they come to us with this notion of, I need to rank for X keyword. Let's say it's divorce lawyer in Nevada or DUI attorney Montana. And if you can't guarantee me that we're going to do that, then I'm going to go with somebody that says that they can guarantee. And we think that this is the wrong approach. And usually what we'll tell people is, well, that's a misguided approach. And then they sometimes have to go and learn their lesson the hard way, because people, like Larry said, are not conducting those kind of searches, at least in great volume. The people that are searching for DUI attorney Montana or family lawyer Nevada or things like that are usually marketers that are trying to cold call attorneys, or they are attorneys trying to see what their competitors are doing in a misguided kind of arms race to dominate things that are not really that relevant in the scope of finding, attracting, and making a connection with viable potential clients and referral sources. So it's a great point, Larry.
So why don't we move on to another topic that I'd really be interested in talking about, and that is the whole notion of, should you publish articles on LinkedIn? I publish articles. I'm constantly invited by LinkedIn to go to LinkedIn Pulse and put up an article. It's pitched, and there are, by the way, a lot of consultants, publishing articles on LinkedIn as a way to be a thought leader, a way to really stand out. However, I have to go with, the experiences that that I have when, for example, I go to a conference and walk up to a bunch of people. When I tell them my name, I typically hear, "Oh, I've read your blog for years." What I don't hear is somebody saying, "Oh, I saw your article on LinkedIn Pulse," or "I saw your profile on LinkedIn." I mean, I think there's a purpose for publishing on LinkedIn, and it's basically if you find yourself with so much good content that you can't possibly publish it all on the sites that you control, well, then maybe put some of the surplus on LinkedIn. But Dan, in my experience, most lawyers are struggling as hard as they can to keep up with publishing content on their own websites. What would your take on this be?
I agree. You have to tend to your own house first before you can really benefit by being a guest in somebody else's house. So if you, and what I mean by that is work on your own website first. And I mean, we have lawyers that have thousands of pages on their site. We have some that are getting over 5,000 visitors a month, even some that are getting over 1,000 visitors a day, and they still have things that they haven't yet said on their website. And they get it. They keep adding content to their websites. And so, if you're contributing to build something that you don't own and you don't control, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's answering questions on Avo or any other forum, we strongly recommend that you tend to your own house first. Larry, I'm curious what your take on using a forum such as LinkedIn to supplement. So, and what I mean by that is, let's say you've written a 2,000 word blog post on some new legislation in your state, and you're done with that, and obviously you would want to announce it on various places, maybe including LinkedIn, so people know that the article is out there without having to go to your site and actually discover it. But what do you feel about taking a forum like LinkedIn and writing kind of a mini summary of it, saying, "Hey, I wrote this article here. Here are the main points. To learn more about it or to read the whole article, click here."
I think that's a good approach because essentially I want to build traffic to my blog. I don't want to write a bunch of material and increase the traffic on LinkedIn. That doesn't really serve my business purposes. And you sort of have to think about who's going to read your article when you publish it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is primarily a business site. It's a professional site. It is not something that is trafficked a lot by consumers looking for attorneys. So if you have a DUI or a personal injury or a family law practice, you're really not going to be discovered by many consumers on LinkedIn, in my opinion. However, LinkedIn is a great place to find other attorneys, to find referral sources, and so if you're going to post on LinkedIn, it might make sense to put up something that's a substantive legal topic or an analysis of a new opinion. But I would keep it rather brief and use it as sort of the big end of the funnel to say, here's this issue that I've just discovered. I analyze it on my blog. Click here to find out more, and use it as a traffic builder for your own site.
So if an attorney is facing a situation where they've got limited time, they're doing their own blogging, for example, and they've written this great substantive piece on their own website, what do you think in most cases? Let's say they're a bankruptcy attorney. They've written something about a change in the law on their website, and then they have the choice of spending a half an hour writing 500 words to either promote that particular piece on LinkedIn or put that time towards writing another substantive piece, maybe on a different topic on their own blog. How do you reconcile where to spend that time?
Well, I would urge an attorney to develop new content for their blog, as opposed to developing new content for LinkedIn. If an attorney has written a really good piece on their blog, one of the smart things you can do is join a number of groups that might be interested in that topic. For instance, I moderate 4 different marketing groups on LinkedIn. So when I've written a new marketing article on my blog, I go to those groups and I start a conversation by mentioning, I make this point in this article I just wrote, and here's the link, and that's how you can discover it. And it's a way of using LinkedIn as kind of a broadcast vehicle to promote material that exists on my blog. What I have found useful on LinkedIn is, for instance, I'll write for publications all over the world, as well as a lot of small publications and newsletters. And it frequently happens, or it sometimes happens, that these publications don't have a website equivalent, or if they do, it's behind some kind of a paywall, so that the people that follow me won't have a way to see it. So what I can do is take that article, which has not appeared online anywhere, and publish it on LinkedIn. And and in the article, I'll include links to my blog where you can find related material. So it's been useful for that purpose. How have you used LinkedIn to basically? How have you advised lawyers to use LinkedIn when they have some new content to put up?
Well, once they have a requisite amount of content in their website, I recommend approaching it cautiously. So let's say you are a lawyer that does mostly business to business type law. Let's say you're a patent lawyer and you've written a great piece about something that would appeal to business leaders on LinkedIn. I think it makes sense to experiment with either summarizing the article or posting excerpts of it, as a separate piece on LinkedIn to see if that gets traction, but measure it. And then from there you can always tell whether that activity was a best use of your time, or whether your time would have been better spent doing something else. And so it's really, but let's say you're a DUI lawyer and you write a great article about some new case law that came out, probably not going to be the best use of your time to spend a lot of time writing something separately on LinkedIn. Now, certainly, for example, I early on in LinkedIn, while I was still practicing, I founded a DUI law group that now has roughly about 7,000 active attorney members. And posting the article in a place like that is a great idea. So basically posting a link to it and maybe asking the group a question. So for example, this legislation just passed in our state, or this new direction in case law was decided here. What are your states doing with it? What are the trends that you're seeing? That type of thing, and that not only prompts other lawyers to go to your website to really digest it, but it also usually facilitates conversation within the LinkedIn group, which is great for getting you noticed as a thought leader amongst other attorneys who may refer cases to you from non-competing jurisdictions. And so it really, it's there's no one size fits all, and that's something that if you're a Lawlytics member and you want help deciding things like that, let us know. We can always be very helpful with things like that.
So looking at our next topic here, which sort of piggybacks on what we were just talking about, where if LinkedIn is really a good opportunity for attorneys to sort of network with other attorneys, what about attorneys trying to find clients online? I'd recently written a piece about the modern law firm client acquisition cycle, and Larry recently wrote a piece about some 5-star business development tips, and the intersection of those two things has to do with one overlapping part, and that is positive client reviews that are online and how much they matter. Larry, can you tell us a little bit about why those reviews are so important to getting new business?
Well, all kinds of research points out to the importance, the critical importance of getting good reviews. I mean, I think this will be the year of reviews in terms of marketing trends. Even going back to 2013, there was a study by Bright Local which found that 80% of consumers trust online reviews as much as they trust personal recommendations, which is to say that online reviews have become the new word of mouth. And this is backed up by Another study done last year by reviewtrackers.com. I was really impressed by this statistic that 83% of people check lawyer reviews as the first step in finding an attorney. And of course, they're going to look on Google and Yelp and Avvo, lawyers.com, and other places. And one more statistic is that 60% of consumers pay the most attention to that little star rating. You know, did you get 3 stars, 4 stars, or 5 stars? And it can make a huge impact on whether or not a potential client chooses your firm. So, you know, think of it as the new word of mouth. We can talk about this a little bit now. I think lawyers should be actively encouraging clients to get reviews. And of course, you know, I would add that, you know, all of these reviewing sites are actively encouraging clients to do reviews. For instance, Google has launched their local guides program, where they reward you for giving reviews of various businesses. If you're it's a point system, and if you get to level 4 with 200 points, you get 1 terabyte of free online storage. So, you know, they're giving out prizes and rewards for doing reviews. So I think reviews have become more important than ever. Would you agree, Dan?
I do. I do agree that they've become more important than ever, and they've also become very much a double-edged sword. So the rewards program that you just mentioned, for instance, troubles me in a number of ways. It used to be that if a client of a law firm was dissatisfied for any reason, they could make a complaint to the bar. They could go directly to the attorney. They could maybe go to the Better Business Bureau. But beyond that, there wasn't the ease with which they can now basically smear an attorney's reputation online, justifiably or otherwise. And the other thing is that there are a number of people out there that make their livings by giving both good reviews and bad reviews, depending on who has employed them to do what angle. And hearing about Google incentivizing people to review places that they've been, the way I understand it is that if you have basically been in a location based on your cell phone's location data, that you then can have an opportunity to review that place. Is that accurate, Larry?
Yes, that's exactly how it works.
And so the concern that I would have, and this is just me thinking out loud here, but the main concern that I would have with that is if there's an incentive, regardless of what the reward is, to review places that you've just been to. A lot of attorneys are in offices that are shared by a bunch of other attorneys and other businesses. So you walk into the 70-something story high-rise that I had my first law office in Seattle, and one time I heard that there were more lawyers in that particular building than there were in all of Japan. Not sure how accurate that is, but my presumption is that Google would at that point, because they can't distinguish between suites when you're in a massive building like that, give you the opportunity to potentially review everybody there. And if that's the case, and if you benefit from reviewing people, it can become very easy to just click and give reviews, even if it's just like 1 star and saying something like hated it, or 5 stars and saying awesome. Those reviews get counted just the same, and they have, I think, for most clients that don't necessarily read in depth into the various reviews and look at more of the aggregate score of the stars that they've accumulated, I think it presents a danger to really obscure who's a good attorney and who's not, based on really inaccurate data that was procured from people that may not even have a foundation to provide such data. That being said, I think it's become a necessary evil because, like it or not, that's the world that we unfortunately live in now. And so attorneys who don't end up playing that game may very well find themselves on the short end of the stick. Now, we see it as so important here at Lawlytics that, not only have we been helping attorneys with this in an advisory capacity when they're our members, but we are getting very close to finalizing a partnership with a company that provides technology that makes it easy to get reviews in those various areas. Now, we've always felt that reviews are important, and when we designed Lawlytics, we built in a recommendations engine that makes it very easy for our member attorneys to get recommendations from their former clients and from other attorneys and put them on their website. But we see it as very important to address this reputation issue in regard to these star ratings on sites such as Avvo, Yelp, and Google, amongst others. So absolutely, it's imperative at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you make an excellent point, Dan, that this can become dangerous to a firm's reputation, which makes it imperative for law firms to manage it. I know I've talked to a number of other attorneys that have come up with solutions for managing it, and what they're doing is, number one, they're telling their staffs which review sites are important. In other words, we want to make sure that we want to optimize our reviews on Google and Avvo. A lot of firms are not bothering with Yelp because in order to post a review on Yelp, Yelp requires you to have an account, and they want to see that you've already published a number of reviews, and it's a real hurdle to put a client through if they've never posted a review before. However, as part of the onboarding process for a new client, law firms are now giving clients other reviews that have been posted online, and they're telling them at the very outset of the relationship that they're going to be asking for feedback so that they can improve their practice. And they inquire about whether you have a Gmail address and so forth. And then at the end of an engagement, when there's some really good news to tell the client, it's a real optimum time to make a personal request to the client, not a mass email message. To request a review, to request some feedback. And firms that have taken an intentional approach to reviews like this. By the way, you cannot offer a client anything of value, not even a Starbucks card or anything like that, or a coupon to give you a review. It's got to be there's got to be no quid pro quo. But if you get to the point where you have more than 10 reviews, you're probably going to be in the top 5% of total reviews in your market. And I got to say, Dan, that's one of the things I really like about my blog on Lawlytics is the recommendation engine. I mean, I can manage recommendations from my clients. I can request endorsements from other attorneys. It's a really nice sort of fill-in-the-blank system where I can tailor an email to a client with a link to my site, and Lawlytics has sort of a nice template that's already in place that can be edited, where I can ask for a review, and I'm happy to say I enjoy a number of positive reviews. It works really well.
Yeah, and I see a question that's come in regarding the review engine. Yeah, we can go ahead and do a quick demo of that. What we'll do is this webinar is being recorded, and so for those of you who may need to go at some point, you can always double back because we'll publish the recording. We will have a question and answer session at the end, and what we'll do is as part of the question and answer session, we'll switch the screen to me, and I'll just go ahead and just give you kind of a brief glimpse of how the recommendations module in Lawlytics works. Larry, I do have a question for you based on one of the things that you were just talking about, and that is how law firms are starting to preemptively at the outset of the representation not only show positive reviews, but kind of prepare the client for the eventuality that the lawyer will ask them to also participate in that review process once the good news happens. How have firms handled it in the situation where they've they've given this kind of preface to the representation, and then the outcome of the case was not something that the client was satisfied with. So, for example, let's say it was a criminal charge, and the attorney doesn't necessarily have all the facts when they start the case, and the person might have gotten a good deal, but maybe was advised to take a plea bargain that they're not necessarily thrilled with, and the longer, at least when I was practicing, the longer the longer amount of time that passed between the conclusion of the representation and whenever we next heard from the client, the more chance there was that the client, went from either getting a dismissal and thinking that we were great, to then thinking, well, the case was a slam dunk at that point, thinking anybody could have done it, thinking, well, why did I pay this lawyer X number of thousands of dollars to do something that I maybe could have done myself? These are the things that go through clients' minds, especially in areas like criminal defense and family law. How should attorneys approach that kind of preemptive asking for recommendations if the case doesn't turn out in a way that's likely to result in a positive recommendation?
Well, the first thing to understand about reviews is this is not journalism. You're not publishing a newspaper about how your clients feel about you. What you are doing are seeking reviews and recommendations. And obviously, you don't want to go to a client and say, well, we completely botched your case. You lost all your money and you're in jail for 10 years. How about a review? That would be ridiculous. The thing to look for is that optimum moment when, the client is sort of at the peak of satisfaction with you as an attorney, and to try to capture that. And I think that's a fair thing to do. And that might be the moment when you invite the family of somebody who was injured in an accident into your office, and you present them with the check. Or, in any sort of a case where, in family law, perhaps it was a long and arduous fight, but, you got the most that you could possibly get for your client. And try to capture that. That's the time to ask for a review.
Do you have any guidance about, I guess, a decay algorithm, if you will? And what I mean by that is, like, so let's say they've got the good result. It doesn't seem appropriate at that time, for whatever reason, given their circumstance, to say, oh, hey, here's your check, by the way, would you mind sitting down and getting on Yelp right now? Do you have any guidelines as far as how long is okay to wait in various types of cases, or just in general?
I wouldn't wait at all, because the happiness of the client is going to decay very quickly. They're going to be really happy, and just as you outlined, maybe a week goes by and they think, yeah, well, I got the outcome I wanted, but it cost me a lot of money. And then maybe a month later, just as you said, they're going to think, gee, any lawyer could have done that. So, the goodwill and happiness of a client is going to deteriorate very quickly. So what you want to do is catch them at that optimum moment and ask them to do something to give you feedback so you can improve your practice. You want that immediately. And, the way that you get that is, you bring the client through a whole onboarding process where, they're made aware from the very beginning that they will be asked to give some feedback. So, a lot of it is just the way that you set expectations. You set expectations for the client to write a review, and then you try to capture them at that moment. And, every day that you let go by that review is going to be just a little bit less positive. You want to seize the moment.
And what do you and I absolutely agree with that. What do you recommend though in a case like so let's say it's awkward because it's an emotional moment. They've got their check, they're going to move on with their life, and then you kind of say something like, "Well, I hate to ask, but would you mind just sitting down and doing this for me?" And they say, "Yeah, just sure, send me the link or whatever, and I'll do it." And let's say a week or 2 weeks goes by and you haven't heard from them. They haven't posted a recommendation at that point. Do you recommend following up with them, Larry?
Yes, yes. And in fact, law firms I know will either have the handling attorney make a follow-up call and just inquire that, we're really looking for a review, or they'll have dedicated staff, people who are very empathetic, very good at working with people to follow up with them. It's also an opportunity to see how the client is doing, if there's anything else you can do for them. But yeah, don't let the opportunity to get a good review go away just because you fail to follow up.
Do you have any data or insight into how effective it is to have the primary contact, whether it's the primary attorney on the case, or if they've been contacted mostly by a paralegal throughout the representation, the paralegal, whoever that familiar voice or face was, contact them versus somebody whose more dedicated job it would be to follow up with things like that?
Well, what I see other law firms doing is that frequently they'll appoint a paralegal or a case manager or somebody who is going to be in touch with the client on a day-to-day basis and pick up the phone when the client calls up with questions. And it's that person who has spent the most time with the client. Uh, that's the person that I've seen other law firms assign to, making the request for the review and then following up and making sure that you get it.
Gotcha. That makes a whole lot of sense. Now, to follow up with that, we've seen several. So when somebody joins Lawlytics, oftentimes what we'll end up doing is importing their website from other platforms, and oftentimes those platforms don't have as robust of a recommendations engine as Lawlytics has, and it'll have like a page that has just a list of all these recommendations, and some of them will be quite in depth, and other of them will just be brief. But a lot of times what we'll see, especially in firms that utilize associates and have a turnover rate with associates, is we'll see recommendations that mention an associate attorney that may not even be with that firm by name as part of the thank you. It's a nice personal great recommendation, but it mentions somebody that's not there anymore. For that reason, do you recommend still like giving them any guidance as to how you want it? Give it to the firm in general, give it to the individual attorney, or no guidance at all?
Well, those are great questions, and I can see a lot of attorneys struggling with it, which is why I like the Lawlytics recommendation engine. And I'm looking at a screenshot right now where this is all spelled out and made clear in a templated kind of form. So at the top it says who you're going to send it to, and that's the client's name, and you insert their email, you include a link to your site, and it's basically an email that starts with a subject that says, "Would you kindly recommend me?" And I love the sample message. Here's what you should say. You could say, "I'm building my firm's web presence using Lawlytics, an online application that helps me display everything that I want the public to know about our firm and our practice. Your recommendation would mean a lot to me. You can get a complete brief recommendation in a matter of minutes by clicking Recommend Me below. There is no registration process, and if you choose to remain completely anonymous, no requirement to leave any personally identifiable information is necessary." And then you just click Send Request. If I were, and I think that's really, it takes a lot of the guesswork out, and it makes it really easy to request a client for references. And there is going to be turnover in a law firm. And I think the firm sort of has to make, a judgment. If perhaps the handling attorney or the associate left, well, that was just one person on the team of people from the firm that helped the client. So just because one team member leaves doesn't mean that all of the good work of the entire firm should be discounted. So it's kind of a choice, I think, that law firms have to make. If a member of the team leaves and a client was happy with the team, the comments about the team and the firm are still valid, and I think it's reasonable to leave that recommendation online.
Yeah, and I guess and I think we could go further and further down this rabbit hole. So I'm going to just ask one more question, and then I promise I'll lay off of this line of inquiry. So let's say that the recommendation, mentions an attorney by name specifically. That attorney is no longer with the firm. In fact, that attorney has gone out and become a competitor. It's still a firm effort. It just happened to be that that person was the main contact for the firm. Uh, Depending on what kind of access you have. Now, if it's on Google, you don't have any access at all to edit it.
Right,
Same with
right.
Avo. But let's say it's on your website and you do have the ability to access and edit it. It strikes me as being unethical to just redact that person's name because it really distorts the message that the client was leaving as far as the recommendation. But if you leave it, it makes the firm sound good, but it also may be free advertising for that attorney who justifiably earned that result because they're mentioned specifically in it. But how can an attorney parse that and decide whether the value of leaving it on there with a former associate's name who is now a competitor is a benefit to the firm, a detriment, or a wash?
Well, that's an easy one. I mean, if you think that editing a review is, if you're contemplating editing a review and your gut tells you it's unethical, don't do it. And if the review mentions someone who's a competitor, delete it. You don't have to put up every review online that you get. So it's one of these things that let the ethics rules and your conscience be your guide.
Right. And I absolutely agree with that. It's the safest way to go. And I guess really it comes down to, as long as you have a lot of good reviews, then it doesn't really hurt to get rid of one good review that might have that conflict of interest in it. What about a scenario where it's the best result? So you're at a firm that gets a bunch of settlements and verdicts between $500,000 and $1 million, and you have an associate who obtained a $10 million verdict that was collected and then went out on their own after that. What then?
I think it would be legitimate to say that the firm obtained this result, but the mistake I see a lot of firms doing is just kind of listing all these verdicts as kind of a scorecard, and it starts at the top with the highest verdict, and then it goes down the list to the smallest verdict, and there's really no way for a visitor to engage with information like that. And what would make a lot more sense would be to tell the story of the client that's involved in the verdict or settlement, because this is not a story to be told about the lawyers who handled the case. What you want to put online is what happened to the client, what were the obstacles that they had to overcome, what what sort of needs did they have, and how did this verdict or settlement help them get on with their life? I think that's a much more compelling story than to say, I got a $2.5 million settlement for a leg off case in a car accident. That's not going to appeal to anybody.
Those are great points, Larry. And remind me when we're doing the demo of the Lawless recommendation engine at the end of this webinar to point out how you would add that additional information to a Lawlytics recommendation without doing anything to touch the purity of the original recommendation as written by the client.
You bet. Right.
Great.
So
Should we go ahead, Tori?
I was thinking let's go ahead and move to the next topic here. This is something that I had mentioned at the very beginning of this discussion, this new Google product. Google Calendar has recently added what's called Google Goals, and it can really help you to find time to do lots of things. And as a personal productivity nut, I think this is a fantastic idea for a couple reasons. But one area we thought it could be useful for is helping lawyers to be more disciplined in their legal marketing activities, whether that is blogging, whether that is sending emails to clients, whatever that may be. So it's an aspect of Google Calendar that acts a little bit like a personal assistant, and here's how it works. Let's say that you are interested in blogging more often, but you're struggling to find the right time to fit it into your schedule. I grabbed a screenshot of my phone this morning to show you, but what you can do is select the goal that you're thinking about, whether it's one of the predefined goals that Google has set up or one that you want to create yourself. Maybe it's, as we were talking about earlier, contacting former clients to ask for reviews, whatever that may be. And then Google Goals will ask you how often you want to do that and what time of day is best. And once you've made those selections, Google finds the time in your calendar, those times that are best for you to complete that activity, which can help you stay on track. So Dan, I'd like to start with you on this question. What sort of potential benefits do you think lawyers can get from a product like this? And maybe how does content strategy fit into a product like this one?
Well, we're oftentimes asked about cadence, how often lawyers should do things on their website, such as blog, how often they should update things, ask for recommendations, put in case results, that type of thing. And, the problem that I always ran into in my practice, and that I know most every lawyer runs into as well, is when you're successful and you've got a lot of clients, oftentimes the time just goes by without realizing that you didn't do these things that can't really be scheduled, because you never know when the phone is going to ring, or when you're going to get called back into court, or how long court's going to last. And so, by setting time goals for yourself, so I'm going to spend 2 hours this week blogging, or I'm going to spend 10 hours this month doing so, and it allows you to fit those things in. It can be an extra source of discipline while you're getting that habit down. What we see especially from new Lawlytics members that have come from a situation where they're not doing anything on their marketing to getting really interested in participating in their own marketing and driving up their return on investment by leveraging their own efforts. The allocation of that time is a major hurdle. But once they do it for a couple months and they start seeing the positive rewards that it brings, then it's easier to do it without any reminder, because you're constantly thinking about it, because it's producing great results. But I think in the interim, just like getting to the gym might be very difficult the first several weeks, and you might not notice results the first several weeks. If you stick with it, all of a sudden you're going to start losing weight. You're going to start feeling better. You're going to start getting addicted, and you're going to start missing it when you can't get to the gym. So I see it the same way. That being said, I have not personally used the product.
Tori, when you first told me about this, I just thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I need. And it made me think of the TV show Gotham, which is about the early days of Batman. And, there's Bruce Wayne. And my favorite character on the show is Alfred. And he's the personal assistant for Bruce Wayne, who sort of says, Bruce, you shouldn't do that. It's kind of dangerous. Bruce, you have some time free. Shouldn't you be working on this project? And that's what I need. I need a personal Alfred. I want Google's artificial intelligence to sort of say, you've got a little hole in your schedule here, and you were probably just going to fritter the time away, but why don't you sit down and write about that blog post for the Huffington Post that you've been had on your mind for the last 2 weeks? And, a little tickler from a second party, even if it's, Google's artificial intelligence reminding me, it would be extremely helpful. So I'm counting the days when this feature becomes available. So, I can juggle all the stuff that goes on in my life.
So we've discovered that when I wrote a blog post about this originally last week, they had not added this feature to my phone yet. I have an iPhone 6. They recently added it now, so I'm testing it out, and I'll let you guys know how it goes here. But it's also available for Android, so if you happen to have the Google Calendar app on your phone and you want to check it out, that is available for you to do. With that concludes the main portion of our discussion today, although I know Dan is going to field some answers, or questions and answers, as well as doing a demo here. So I will hand it over to him.
Thanks, Tori. Yeah, so let me get set up here, and then we'll just share screen. Give me just a second to get that going. Bear
And this
with
is
me.
to show attendees our recommendation engine.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to take over the screen here, and then we'll get to. I see one other question that's come in as well, and so we'll get to that in a moment as well. So I'm going to go ahead and show my screen. Can Larry or Tori, can you confirm whether you can see my screen, which should be showing the Lawlytics control panel?
I can.
It does. I see
Okay.
it.
Okay, great. Well, so we have a mix of Lawlytics members and non-members in this webinar. And so for those of you who are members, this will undoubtedly look very familiar to you. This is the Lawlytics control panel. And from within the Lawlytics control panel, you can do a number of things. You can publish to any of your websites. You can publish blog posts on all of your websites. You can curate leads. You can interact on the Lawlytics network. You can update attorney information. You can a number of different things. I'm going to focus just on the recommendations engine because that's what we've been talking about today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, from the publish menu, go to recommendations. And you'll see, and this is a sample account. And so normally Lawlytics customers have somewhere between 1 and 10 websites at the most, with the vast majority having 1, 2 or 3. This is our sample demo account, and so we've got a vast number of sites in here. Each one of these is a sample site in our system, and so you normally won't see this. There'll be just a few of these, but what you see here is these are all of the recommendations, and you can just keep scrolling through these. You can search through them and so forth. Let me show you one of our sample websites. So this is just a sample website. There's nothing substantive in here, but let's go to the recommendations area of it. And you'll see we've got 4 recommendations that are currently being displayed there. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this one. And then you'll see what Lawlytics does is it automatically adds in the ability to focus on one recommendation at a time and gives the visitor the ability to just scroll through them in whatever order they're designated on this side. So if you want to reorder something, you just basically drag it and drop it into the order. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this text for lack of because I don't have anything planned here. And I'm going to show you what creating a new recommendation looks like on Lawlytics. So this is a scenario where you already have the recommendation. So somebody emailed you a recommendation, they've put it somewhere else that you can use, they've sent you a card or something. So what you would do is you would click the new button, and then let's just put the recommendation in there, and let's give it a title. So thanks for saving my career. You can designate which attorney is being recommended. So we'll say here that John Sample, who is the fictional attorney that I'm logged in as, is the one that did the recommending. And then we'll just put my initials in there because I want to remain somewhat anonymous. It is a client recommendation. You can also designate it's a peer recommendation or something other. And then what we'll do is this particular site here is our Lawlytics, let's see, it's the Loquitur template. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to check this site, and we're going to go ahead and create the recommendation. Now, what this does is it puts it right up at the top. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the recommendations page, and now we'll see that this says, thanks for saving my career up here. Let's say that we want to still lead with an honest, brilliant lawyer in your corner as the first recommendation. What we would do is we would just take this and drag it down 1 or 2 slots. And then when we go back here, we can refresh, and we'll see now that this is back to the top, and we put this in the 3rd position. Let's dig a little bit deeper. So as Larry was talking about, it makes sense when you have a recommendation to add some context to that recommendation that your other potential clients will be able to relate to. So let's just say it says, thanks for saving my career, and this says you did a great job, you were attentive, blah, 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 but doesn't say anything substantive about the actual case. Well, what you can do in Lawlytics, and I'm just going to grab this again because this is just consider this filler text. You can go back to that particular case result. We're going to edit it, and you can do this when it's new too. And you've got this details area here. And so you can add details about the case or the result. And when you update this, what you're going to see is duplicating content here because I just used the same content. But so you've got the recommendation, you've got who recommended you, and then you can say, note, this was a case about a severed limb, as Larry used as an example. The facts were this: we filed a motion for summary judgment on these issues. This is what came back. These were the odds that we were facing, that type of thing. And so it gives you a way to really curate what's going on. Now, the other way that you can use the Lawlytics recommendations engine, and Larry touched on this briefly, is you can send recommendations out to people that you want to recommend you. So from the outgoing recommendations tab, again, you press the new button, and you can put in the recipient's name, recipient's email. If you have multiple sites, you can choose which site to send them to. You can give it your own title or subject rather, and then you can change this text to whatever you want it to say. Thank you for trusting us. I would really appreciate it if you'd give us a recommendation. And then what it'll do is when it sends them this email, it will in the email put a button in that they will go to a page that's specially created for them in the context of the website. So in the middle of the website, and there'll be a form, and it will already have the information that you put in there about them pre-filled. They can certainly change it, but it identifies it as them. It gives them an easy place to start. And then it just says, write the recommendation. Once the recommendation is submitted, then it will appear back in this received area, and there'll be an indicator on it that it's an incoming recommendation, and it will give you the option to either approve it and publish it. You choose which site you publish it to. You choose which order it goes in if you want to reorder it. Or you can also either choose not to publish it at all, or you can send it back to them and ask them for revisions. If there's something that's inaccurate, or you want them to, you want to see if you can get them to add a little bit more information to flesh it out a little bit, that type of thing. So this is the Lawlytics recommendation engine. It makes it really easy for you to update it yourself and ask for recommendations. Now, this is separate from the partnership that we are forming, and we'll have more information about that in the coming weeks. But we wanted to give our members an easy way to be able to reach out and in a single action ask multiple clients that they've served in the past for recommendations on such things as Google, Yelp, and Avo, and others as well. And so more information about that coming up soon. Let's go ahead, and I'm just going to go back, and I'll just put this part up so everybody will have our contact information while we're finishing this up. And let's just take a quick look at the questions. So the only question that has come in so far is, it says, please talk more about how rank branding works and keywords being obsolete. How do you research search terms and questions, and how do you recommend content optimization? Well, So the way that, and we've talked about this in depth in other webinars, and if you go to the, actually, let me just go ahead and show this. Let's get out of here and we'll go here. If you go to the Lawlytics website and you scroll down to the footer, you'll see live webinars and recorded webinars. And this is a list of all of the webinars that we have available to watch on demand. And there are a lot of webinars that address this question directly. There's content creation clinics, content planning clinics, blogging, and so forth. And there's a lot that goes into it, probably beyond the scope of the details that we're able to get into at the end of this webinar. However, the way that I like to frame it in my mind, and the way that I like to coach our Lawlytics members to do it, is to think about having a client across from you in your conference room or in your office asking you questions about their case. What questions do they typically have? What concerns do they have? How do they phrase those questions? What vocabulary do they use? They may not use the legal terms of art that we use when we're talking about cases as an attorney. They may use more common versions of it. They may even refer to it in a way that doesn't make sense legally, but certainly makes sense to them as they're trying to articulate their questions and concerns. I recommend always listening to what they're saying and try to exhaustively cover every single question that your potential clients have and that your clients have during the course of representation that's not case specific in great detail. And by doing so, it basically, the optimization takes care of itself. Now, Lawlytics does make it very easy for you to add things like various levels of headers within your various pages. And we teach you how to do all that. And we have webinars that go into great detail on that as well, if you're not a Lawlytics member and want to check those out. But the gist of it is that search engine optimization and content optimization, which we now see as basically the same thing, there really aren't any tricks. And as far as researching what people are looking for, you can certainly use some of the keyword tools that are out there, but that doesn't really even give you a good idea of what your viable potential clients are looking for. It's only what search volume is looking for, which may be what your competitors are looking for and what marketers are looking for. And so we've found that our customers who take that approach of exhaustively answering questions really end up succeeding a lot faster and in a much more enduring way than those that take the old-fashioned keyword-based approach. Let's see. So another question came in, and it says, would you say that online reviews may not be as helpful as if you work for a corporate law firm which deals primarily with businesses? From my perspective, those points of social proof are still very important, but usually with a business to business type situation, there's going to be a referral rather than somebody finding you directly on the web. And so if you're dealing with large businesses, then it's probably less important. Although, Larry, I'd love to get your take on that as well. If you're dealing with small business owners who don't necessarily have a connection and are less sophisticated with it, hearing from other business owners that you've helped would be great. Now, from personal experience, I had to shop for a mergers and acquisitions attorney when my first business was in the process of being acquired, and I was entertaining term sheets. And I'd never done that before. Certainly, I had practiced law for many years, and so maybe I had a little bit of an advantage. But the way I approached it was I wanted to know, not only that the attorney was competent, but I wanted to know what other deals they had done. I wanted to know, had they been on the other side of negotiations from the various companies that I was entertaining acquisition offers from during that time. And then I asked the attorneys that I was interviewing to put me in touch with other founders that they had served in similar transactions. And had I been able to read those reviews at that time, and this was over 5 years ago now, and there really wasn't a whole lot of reviews at that time compared to how many there are now. I think I would have looked at those, putting on my business hat rather than my lawyer hat. I think I would have looked at those and considered them. And if I was looking at a firm that had especially recognizable founders that had had good outcomes in their transactions, I think it would have been persuasive, and I think it would have maybe tipped the scales towards me going with somebody that had more recommendations versus somebody that still came highly recommended by word of mouth, but was not as highly recommended or as frequently recommended online. Larry, do you have any other input on that?
Oh, sure. For a business law firm, your target customer is the in-house counsel or the general counsel at a corporation. And these are people who read reviews just as closely as consumers do. And I base that statement on surveys conducted by a company called Serengeti of members of the Association of Corporate Counsel. And in fact, a lot of the Association of Corporate Counsel has a section where there are private reviews of law firms. A lot of these software programs that corporation in-house counsel use to manage their law firms will also include reviews of law firms and particular attorneys. So these reviews are being made and relied on. And, once again, it's imperative for a business law firm with business clients to do what they can to manage this review process, just as law firms who have consumer clients. If you successfully closed a big merger or acquisition, or you just got a defense verdict for a client in a bet the company case, it's the same thing. That's the time when you want to approach general counsel and ask them, would you please give us an evaluation of our work so we can improve our practice? And general counsel are business people. They realize that law firms are looking for reviews, and it makes a difference in their business development efforts. And most of them, if you have a good relationship with them, will be more than happy to give you a review. So, once again, know that reviews are being relied on by businesses, and get ahead of the curve and capture that magic moment when your corporate client is most happy.
Great. Well, I think that's great advice. I don't see any other questions that have come in. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this month. Larry and Tori, thank you for your participation. This, as always, has been great. If you've registered for this, you're automatically registered for the remaining webinars in this series throughout the rest of this year. And so there's nothing else for you to do. If you'd like to attend future webinars, you'll be automatically emailed your access code prior to the next one next month. If you want to register for other webinars, though, you can go ahead and register for any of the upcoming live ones that we have, or any of the on-demand ones from the website, and that will give you instant access to the on-demand ones and the live ones we have scheduled. We have one coming up this Thursday, and then there's several more in the coming weeks that we'll be presenting. And as always, if you have questions for us, if you want us to look over what you're doing, talk about your goals or anything like that, whether you're a Lawlytics member or not, we're always happy to talk with you. We love talking with attorneys and helping them try to make the best decisions in their practices. And so with that, thank you all for attending. And this webinar will be available online. We'll do a blog post that includes the recording of it probably within the next couple days. Have a great day.